Phil Mickelson just strolled into the most guarded room in golf and dropped a bomb nobody in that building saw coming. Executives lined the walls, cameras were rolling. Brian Rolapp sat dead center, expecting a calm little sit-down with zero surprises. Lefty had other ideas. Rising at that microphone, the most controversial man in the sport handed leadership something they never budget for, a flat-out ultimatum. No sugarcoating, no cozy corporate handshake, just both barrels. Guys who spent 4 years glaring at each other from opposite trenches suddenly stood together, clapping for a player half of them wanted banished a season ago. Rolapp's face told the whole story. Picture a deer in headlights who also just realized his parachute is actually a backpack. So, what did Mickelson unload to freeze that entire room solid? How did the shiny new CEO fire back? And where does any of this leave a tour already running like a daytime soap with better sponsors? Buckle up, folks, because we're breaking down every jaw-dropping second. Smash subscribe before we dig in, since the next chapter of this circus is going to be absolutely nuts. Before getting to that mic drop, you have to feel the temperature of the room he waltzed into. Nobody planned a brawl here. This gathering was pitched as a peace summit. Leadership and players finally sitting down like grown-ups to drain the swamp the PGA Tour has become. Cute idea on paper. Somebody clearly forgot to tell the players it was supposed to stay civil. Reality had different plans. Golf's biggest circuit is basically a keg of gunpowder these days, and our new CEO keeps wandering past with a lit match. Rory McIlroy set the tone. 6 majors deep, the loyal soldier who stayed home while everyone else chased Saudi paychecks, he'd just slapped Rolapp with a hard deadline. Patch the 2-track mess, repair the busted playoffs, hand players' actual decision-making muscle, not a decorative chair at the table, real leverage. Leadership's comeback, same polished, nothing burger they always serve, 20-something premium events, a couple hundred players, a more competitive and interesting system. Man talks in press releases while the kitchen catches fire. McIlroy isn't the lone voice either. 11 pros had already torched the 3M Open, boycotting over a surprise rule tweak that veteran Jim Furyk, a dude who's been grinding out here for decades, swore he never even knew existed. Chew on that for a second. A rule so buried that the players supposedly bound by it had no clue, yet 11 of them walked rather than swallow it. Imagine mastering a rulebook your entire career, only to learn the referees keep scribbling fresh pages in invisible ink. Frustration like that doesn't just simmer politely, it boils clean over into a walkout. Leadership's reaction to the walkout, everything's fine, all under control, smooth sailing apparently. Fine is doing Herculean lifting there, because nothing about this is fine and every soul entering that summit knew the ship was taking on water fast. So Rolapp swaggers in acting like he owns the joint. His agenda, his timeline, his shiny 2028 vision, all built by a committee Tiger Woods himself helped chair. Chief executive, top dog, calling every shot, fully expecting the players to nod along like bobbleheads the way they always have. Then Phil Mickelson rose from his seat. Grasp what it even meant for Lefty to be breathing the air in that place. Here's a man who got exiled. Torched every bridge so thoroughly that folks swore he'd never sniff a tour building again. Off to LIV he skipped, lobbing verbal grenades at leadership that had lawyers reaching for their notepads. Villain of the whole story. That cautionary bedtime tale veterans whisper to rookies about biting the hand that signs the checks. Yet there he sat, not merely allowed back inside. Easily the most dangerous body in the entire place. Mickelson didn't crawl home empty-handed, see. 2 years he spent on the outside studying exactly how LIV ran its operation, clocking every blunder his old tour kept making, soaking in the full chessboard from an angle nobody else in that building has ever had. The man came loaded with receipts. Rising to that microphone, every person in the room felt the shift in their gut. Our guy didn't come out swinging, though. That's the part that spooked people. He opened soft, almost gentle, dripping with nostalgia, reminiscing about his early days, what this tour meant to a young Californian kid Those tournaments soaked in history that fans crossed state lines to witness. Warm, relaxed. Rolapp was practically nodding along, and a few suits cracked smiles, bracing for a feel-good redemption arc from the reformed rebel. Boy, were they reading the wrong green. Then came the pivot. When Lefty pivots, you feel it rattle your ribs. Locking eyes on the leadership table, ignoring the players, ignoring the cameras, he said the quiet part loud, the thing nobody with a board seat dares whisper. Calling the two-track system a restructure is a punchline, he argued. It's a demolition wearing a hard hat. Slapping a second-tier sticker on tournaments older than half the executives in that room isn't organizing anything, he said. That's disrespect with a spreadsheet. Players never shredded their bodies, torched their family time, and grinded for decades just to get handed a blueprint drawn up without a single one of them being asked a single question. Next, Lefty dragged the USGA into the spotlight. He jabbed a finger dead at the 3M Open fiasco. How does a governing body, Mickelson wondered aloud, cook up rules that the very players expected to obey them don't even know exist? Where does a tour get off puffing its chest about representing its members while bolting every door where the real decisions get made? 11 professionals, elite talent, top of the food chain, felt so ignored, so powerless, that a boycott became the only word left in their vocabulary. Silence swallowed the room. You could have heard a golf ball drop on shag carpet. Finally, the hammer landed. Here comes the line destined to get clipped, captioned, and replayed for years. Players aren't employees begging for a raise, Lefty declared. They are the product. Yank them out, and there's no tour. 0 television deals worth a signature. Not one sponsor check worth cashing. Empty grandstands. Networks won't cut billion-dollar checks to broadcast bare fairways and a shiny logo. And no sponsor glues its name to a leaderboard stuffed with nobodies. No earthly reason for a single suit in that room to keep collecting a paycheck. Well past time, he said, for the folks running this sport to treat the folks who literally are this sport with a scrap of respect. The room absolutely detonated, grown men sitting there, arms crossed, jaws clenched, holding it together by a thread, up on their feet. Rivals who've disagreed with Phil about everything for 4 straight years, clapping like fools. Kids who only know Lefty from grainy highlight reels and dinner table legends. Rookies who weren't even pros during the LIV wars, standing tall. That noise wasn't a polite country club golf clap. Years of bottled-up rage finally found an exit door. Rolapp, meanwhile, looked like a man whose floor just gave out beneath his loafers. Before diving into his response, trust me, it's a doozy. Do me one quick favor. If this breakdown is hitting different, mash that like button right now because it tells the algorithm to shove this clip in front of every golf fan who needs it. Drop one word in the comments describing how Phil's ultimatum made you feel. Just one, and let's watch them stack up. All right, back to the carnage. Here's the thing our CEO completely whiffed on. Phil isn't some bitter rebel nursing a grudge anymore. Lefty morphed into something far scarier. A reformed rebel packing genuine credibility. He left, tasted the other side, and came crawling home entirely by choice. When a guy voluntarily walks away from it all, sees life without it, then returns anyway and tells you the house is crumbling, you don't get to wave him off. Nobody could sneer that he doesn't grasp the big picture, since the man literally studied that picture from outside the frame. Whispers leaking out of the summit are downright juicy. One veteran, begging to stay nameless, told reporters it was the first time in ages somebody said exactly what needed saying without first calculating the political tab. He didn't fret over relationships or tiptoe around which fragile ego might bruise. Raw truth, unfiltered and long overdue. Another player reportedly said it felt like somebody finally flipped the lights on in a space where everyone had been stumbling around blind for years. These aren't fringe cranks either. Seasoned pros who know the gap between a moment that matters and one that evaporates by Tuesday. Rolapp's grand answer, meanwhile, careful, measured, maddening, beyond belief. Right back to the teleprompter he scurried. 24 premium events, a couple hundred players, more competitive, more interesting. That identical jingle he's been humming for months. This time, though, it splatted like a wet towel on a cold locker room floor. Phil had already flipped the entire script, so those rehearsed talking points suddenly sounded like precisely what they are. The drone of a man not hearing a single word his players say. Watching him recite it, you almost felt secondhand embarrassment, like a substitute teacher droning through a lesson plan while the class quietly stages a coup. Want to know who's cackling through all of this? The LIV crowd. Every crack in the PGA Tour's foundation is a free billboard for the Saudi League. Public spats, leaked gripes, fresh ultimatums. Each one basically screams, "Come on over. We'll treat you like royalty." Those players who already bounced are watching this dumpster fire with popcorn butter dripping down their chins. Fence sitters are quietly updating their spreadsheets. Greg Norman doesn't even need to hire a recruiter, since the tour is doing his headhunting for free. Honestly, the Shark should mail Rolapp a thank you card and a fruit basket. Now for the part that genuinely rattles the boardroom. Rolapp's entire playbook has been divide and conquer. Keep the players scattered, deal with them one at a time, paint Rory as a cranky outlier, tag the boycotting 11 as troublemakers, and brand Phil a washed-up exile chasing a personal vendetta. That whole strategy only breathes as long as the players never find one unified voice. Guess what Lefty just handed them? Exactly that. Loudly, publicly, right in front of God and the cameras. Sit with the picture for a beat. Mickelson and McIlroy, two men parked on opposite ends of nearly every golf argument for 4 solid years, now aiming at the identical target. That's no grumpy little minority the tour can shrug off anymore. We're talking a coalition with teeth. Once that kind of alliance hardens around a CEO who spent months brushing off anyone daring to question him, his days of consequence-free dismissing are officially on the clock. Picture the leverage a united top 10 actually holds. Skipping a couple of those precious premium events together would crater the ratings overnight. Yank your name, your face, your highlight reel magic off the broadcast, and folks writing the media checks start asking very pointed questions. Here's a wrinkle nobody's chewing on enough. None of this was a hot-headed outburst. Lefty walked in with a game plan, building his speech like a trial lawyer stacking evidence. Nostalgia cracked the door and disarmed the jury. Specifics: the 2-track scheme, the USGA blunders, the boycott, established his credibility. A philosophical haymaker then closed the case. You're nothing without the players. One speech and Rolapp's whole narrative folded like a cheap lawn chair. Scariest bit for leadership. Lefty's barely warmed up. Rumor has it he's already floating ideas about player equity, a genuine board seat, and a media arm the athletes themselves control. None of that is guaranteed to stick, but the genie's already out of the bottle. Swallow this brutal truth, because all of pro golf needs a dose. You cannot build a television product, a sponsorship empire, or a fan experience on the backs of people who feel disrespected and powerless. Doesn't work, never has, not once in the history of professional sports. The PGA Tour is about to relearn that lesson the hard, humiliating, extremely public way, unless somebody upstairs starts truly listening, not the fake kind where you schedule a consultation and then do whatever you'd already decided. Mickelson understands this better than any living human. Remember, he paid for his own blunders in front of the entire planet, yet the wisdom he hauled back into that room, the feel for what this sport is supposed to mean, became the most powerful thing in the building, and the CEO had nothing to counter it. Where this summit ultimately lands, honestly, is anybody's guess. Perhaps the 2-track system gets shredded, Rory's ultimatum might finally earn a real answer, or maybe that speech becomes the moment historians circle a decade from now, possibly just another firework in a sport that keeps launching them and then ignoring the smoke. One thing's locked in, though. Something cracked open today. Players found a voice, a fearless one the boardroom can't casually swat away like it's swatted everything else for 2 straight years. Golf sits at a crossroads it's never faced before. LIV torched the economics. Meanwhile, the USGA keeps bleeding player trust one goofy rule at a time. And leadership is at open war with its own biggest draws. Every faction is armed to the teeth. Nobody in that building blinks first, and the popcorn supply can barely keep pace. Fans, the real diehards who stand in the rain until the last putt rattles in, are watching this whole saga with a wild cocktail of fury and fascination. Today, Lefty marched into the flames on purpose and reminded everybody what this game is supposed to stand for. Pretty poetic for the guy they spent 2 years painting as the sport's biggest heel. Whether the suits clutching the power are ready to actually listen is the question that'll define golf's next decade. Now I want to hear from you. Do you reckon Phil's ultimatum actually moves the needle? Or is this just another firework the tour shrugs off and buries by next week? Tell me down below. I read every single comment, no exceptions. Still not subscribed somehow? What on earth are you waiting for? Tap that button, ding the bell, and fire this off to one golf buddy who needs to see it. This story is nowhere close to finished. The next chapter is already being written, and you do not want to miss a single swing of it. Catch you in the next one.